to many of us in this room, Steve Cobble.
My name is Steve Cobble. I'm a co-founder of AfterDowningStreet.org, Progressive Democrats of America. 35 years ago this week, I was elected a delegate to the National Convention for George McGovern. Why? Because he was the one working hardest to end the war in Vietnam. 20 years ago, I joined the Jesse Jackson for President campaign. I was a lucky white boy. I had a ringside seat in the greatest insurgent electoral campaign this country's ever seen. It changed the Democratic Party, and it changed America. And Jesse Jackson was, and still is, the living link to Dr. King's movement for peace and justice. 5 years ago, I joined up with Dennis Kucinich. Why? Because at a time when George Bush was at 90% in the polls, Dennis Kucinich was the first to stand up and say no to war with Iraq 5 years ago. He risked his career to oppose an illegal, immoral war before it started. Not only that, he led the opposition. He led the House when the votes came down. He sued to stop the war. He went to New York City on February 15, 2003, and rallied against the war on the day the world said no to war. On the night Bush started the war, Dennis Kucinich put out a press release saying it was wrong. Most people went into hiding. Kucinich challenged it within the hour. In September of 2003, we offered the first comprehensive plan to bring the troops home. Too bad nobody listened then. That was almost 4 years ago. He was the first to call for bringing the mercenaries home and closing the bases. He challenged his own party caucus on the privatization of the Iraq war, Iraq oil, the theft of the Iraq oil. He called it a war crime. He voted not to war, and he's consistently voted no on the funding for the war, which is the way we ended the war in Vietnam. He uses this word in public, occupation. It's not a civil war, it's an occupation. Here's some other words he uses. Empire. You don't hear that very often in public. War crimes. Nonviolence. Dennis Kucinich leads on telling the truth. He voted against the Patriot Act when it was politically dangerous to do so. You know why he did? He read it. Dennis is the leader who supports single-payer, not-for-profit health care. He and John Conyers wrote the bill. So when you hear other people saying they have the best plan, or the first plan, or the most comprehensive plan for health care, let's just say they're mistaken. Dennis was there first on fair trade. How many of the other candidates do you think even thought about going to Seattle in 1999 to be with the Turtles and the Teamsters? Yeah, right. Dennis was there. Why? Because he saw what corporate free trade did to his home city of Cleveland. It took the jobs to Mexico, and then they took the jobs to China. And as Dennis said in the debate last week, now we borrow money from China to fund an illegal war in Iraq. Dennis has shown enough leadership in his lifetime that I could go on with a long laundry list of things where he's led. From saving the public utilities in his hometown, to verifiable paper ballots, to challenging President Bush on threatening Iran. But let me just end with this moment of clarity from the debate in South Carolina. Sort of a metaphor for his career. When Brian Williams asked the other candidates if any of them would join in signing on to H.Res. 333, the bill to impeach Dick Cheney that Dennis has introduced. Dennis led on that bill. He led on that bill The other candidates wouldn't stand with Dennis. Dennis stood with the Constitution. Everyone on that stage, everyone in the audience, everyone in this room knows that Dick Cheney has committed impeachable offenses. So why am I for Dennis Kucinich? 4 years ago, when Dennis ran the first time, he said the path to victory lay in opposition to the war and fair trade. How did we win the House back last year? Opposition to the war and fair trade. How did we win the Senate back last year? Opposition to the war and fair trade. How are we going to win next year? By respecting what the people told us they wanted us to do last November. End the war, make trade fair. Dennis Kucinich's issues, Dennis Kucinich's leadership. Brothers and sisters, I give you Congressman Dennis Kucinich.
Our nation is waiting for a grand vision which connects us with a deeper sense of who we are as a people. Our nation is waiting for a grand vision which is propelled by a sense of joy and optimism. Our nation's waiting for a grand vision which sees the world as one, which understands that the world is interconnected and interdependent, and that it is indeed our job to heal this planet, to bring this planet together as one people. I see peace as being the central issue and concern of our time. I see all of the issues that we're speaking about connected to peace, with peace at the center. And in a Kucinich administration, we would begin with an understanding of the centrality of peace to life in the United States and to life on our planet. We would begin with policies which reject war as an instrument of policy. My plan to end the war in Iraq is as follows: that not only must the Congress take a strong stand, and people are waiting for Democrats to tell President Bush no more money. This isn't a question of whether or not we have the vote. I want everyone here to understand this. You know, way back in the 7th grade, in Mrs. Malone's civics class, she showed us how a bill became law, okay? Well, let me tell you how a bill does not become law. You don't offer it. We shouldn't be offering President Bush another piece of legislation that would appropriate money for the war. We need to tell the president now the occupation will come to an end. The troops will be brought home. The bases will be closed. The contractors must be brought back. We must stop the effort to take Iraq's oil. We have no right to that. We must repair the breach that we've created. We must achieve a program of reconciliation between the Shiites, the Sunnis, and the Kurds, and the only way that we can do that is for the United States to lead. We must have an honest reconstruction program in Iraq, and we must stop insisting that Iraq privatize its oil, because that is in and of itself a crime against the people of Iraq. We must challenge war as an instrument of policy. We must challenge the very idea of war, and when we do, then we can start to reconnect with the nations of the world. We need to have an initiative not only to go to Syria and Iran to help us put together an international peacekeeping force that would move in as our troops leave, but we need to go to all the nations of the region to create a design for peace in the region. I believe that the path to peace runs right through Jerusalem, and it's time a president had the ability to approach things in the Middle East with an even hand, with an understanding of the suffering of the Palestinians and of the desire of the Israelis for dealing with the existential threat. We need a president who understands that peace in the Middle East requires this even-handed approach. We need a president who has compassion for both sides, who has the understanding that a healing hand is needed. My whole public record has been one of seeking to reconcile people. We are commanded to make peace with our brothers and sisters. And a Kucinich administration would take that principle of peace into the domestic life of our nation through creating a cabinet-level Department of Peace and Nonviolence, which for the first time will address the issues in an organized way, address the national issues of domestic violence, spousal abuse, child abuse, violence in the school. The time to deal with domestic violence is a little bit late when you're in an emergency room or worse, or in a courtroom. The time to deal with domestic violence is through educating our children principles of compassion, of recognizing that the other person is an aspect of oneself. It's taking the concept of do unto others as you would have them do unto you to another level where we see that other person is an aspect of ourselves. This is not simply a political matter. This is a spiritual principle which we bring into the operation of our country. Peace. Taking the principles of Gandhi and Christ and Dr. King and making nonviolence an organizing principle in our society. We can do this. We can be more than we are. We can be better than we are. And America's waiting for a leader who will call forth that capacity from our people. We need to understand the connection between peace and the environment. We know that life on our planet is threatened by the twin threats of global warring and global warming. They are linked, and we have to understand that as we cognize the world as being interconnected and interdependent, we know that resource wars are passé, and that the focus on sustainability will create peace. We know that as we move away from an addiction to oil and coal and go to green energy, to wind and solar and fuel cell technology, we reduce our carbon footprint, we reduce this quest and lust for oil, we create relations with other nations that we do not try to take their resources. We move forward with harmony with each other and harmony with nature. We have to understand that our commerce must be guided by this principle of harmony. Our green commerce must be the way that America proceeds. Government has to play a role in recognizing that the economy is part of the environment and not the other way around. We need to have renewable energy. We have to preserve our water. No privatization of water assets in this country. We need to have reforestation and preserve habitat. And subsequently, as we reduce our carbon footprint, simultaneously, we work with the world community. The Kyoto Climate Change Treaty is just the first step. We need to go beyond Kyoto. We need to reach out to the world and reduce our carbon emissions. And we need to have environmental protections to secure our food supplies. Another path towards peace in connection and harmony with our environment is our trade laws. One of my first acts in office will be to cancel NAFTA and the WTO and move to trade conditions on environmental quality principles. Trade must come in harmony with environmental consciousness. Trade must be aware of cancel NAFTA, we go to the nations of the world and we say, let us work together to prepare for a time when the air and the water is clean. We need a president who's ready to call that capacity forward from the people. And what would that involve? It would involve the creation of what I call a WGA, a Works Green Administration, just like President Roosevelt created a WPA, where we build public works all over this country. So I will call forth the capacity of our people to participate in a major environmental effort to not only conserve energy, so that each person participates in what you could call a cap and share approach to protecting our environment, but also where we use the productive capacity of government in every area to have NASA help develop the new technologies which can protect our environment, to have the Department of Energy shift its focus away from oil, coal, and nuclear and towards green energy, to have the Department of Education involve our children in environmental education, to have every area of the government involved in environmental consciousness. A president can do that, and I intend to with a WGA that will work green administration, which will produce millions of new jobs, retrofitting homes with green buildings, putting wind and solar microtechnologies, enabling people to save money, reduce the carbon footprint. We can save our planet. We will save our planet, and we'll do it with leadership and with all of us working together to do that. And that's the connection between peace and sustainability. We have to have peace connected with our healthcare systems. Peace of mind is something that is escaping so many Americans when they do not have health care, or or health care is unaffordable. We have 46 million Americans who have no health insurance. Another 50 million Americans are underinsured. Let me tell you, this is a defining economic issue in our country. I stand for a health care system, Medicare for all, H.R. 676, universal, single-payer, not-for-profit, get the private insurers out of health care, help the American people break the shackles which the insurance companies have on our political process. It's time for a president who will challenge the private insurance companies, who will challenge their hold on Washington, who will challenge their hold on the family budgets of Americans, who will challenge the system of premium, copay, and deductibles. I understand how families are suffering. I understand how people don't have the health care they want and need. I know that we're already paying. We're already paying for Medicare for all. We're just not getting it. We're not getting it because this private insurance structure has held our country captive. Half the bankruptcies in America are connected to people not being able to pay their doctor bills or their hospital bills. People are losing their savings. They're making choices in their lives where they're working part-time jobs that they would never work, only to have substandard health care benefits. We're finding people in the twilight of their lives, when somebody gets sick in the family, they have to go and sign the dotted line and put all of the resources they ever worked their life for on the line just to get care for long term. That's wrong. It's morally wrong. We need a president who's ready to take that challenge, call the American people, let's unite this country in a call for H.R. 676, Medicare for all. It is time. It is time. Peace is connected to a healthy economy. We have to see that we have jobs for all. I reject this idea that a certain amount of unemployment is necessary to the proper functioning of the economy. That's good for the economists who are employed who say that, but it's not good for our people everywhere. I will create millions of new jobs, not only with a WGA, but with a new WPA to rebuild America, rebuild our schools, our water systems, our sewer systems, our bridges, new mass transit. We need a multi-billion-dollar investment in America every year, creating the jobs that will rebuild America. We need, not only when we talk about canceling NAFTA and the WTO, we have to recognize that commerce must be guided by moral principles. This is something that I understand from my own spiritual training. the encyclicals of Leo XIII, Rerum Novarum, the encyclical of Paul VI, Popular Progresso, talked about the connection between spiritual principles and commerce. Our commerce is devoid of spiritual principles until a president stands up and says, workers in this country and all countries must have the right to organize, the right to collective bargaining, the right to strike, the right to decent wages and benefits, the right to a secure retirement, the right to participate in the political process, the right to a safe workplace. Workers' rights are human rights, and there is a moral arc that we have to follow in all of our commerce. It's time for a president who understood the concerns of workers, who stood for workers. And we need a president with the capacity to challenge corporate America to be responsible in its commercial policies. We need to break up the monopolies in agriculture, in utilities, in oil, and in all the areas of the economy where restraint of trade is causing Americans to pay higher prices and get inferior products. It is time for us to stand with the farmers of America who can't get the price of their product, don't have parity, can't get their product to market. Stand with the farmers of America by breaking up those agricultural monopolies. Stand with the organic farmers of America and protect organic standards. Stand with the farmers on issues that relate to genetically modified organisms, have safety testing, have laws in regards to that. We need to see an economy which is guided by democratic principles. From the imperative of peace to the imperative of a healthy planet, to the imperative of health care and the imperative of a healthy economy, we go to the imperative of immigrant rights. When I came to the stage, I was brought in with a song that all of us know by Neil Diamond, Coming to America. And I made that choice because I want this country to reconnect, truly, with the dimension of America which welcomed people. I want this country to reconnect with a deeper understanding of who we are. How many people in this audience alone have family, 1, 2, 3 generations came from another country? I want those who are watching on TV to know that most of the people in the audience are affected by and have connections with other countries. The truth is that we're together as one world. That's what America represents. The first motto of this country, E pluribus unum, out of many, one, was not simply about a collection of states. It was about human unity. It was about connection with all people. Our policies, and this big debate about immigration that has basically cowed the Senate into submission, has ignored one fact, and that is that the immigrant workers who have come north of the border were there because after NAFTA passed, wages collapsed in Mexico, the peso dropped, and people were desperate to survive. So what happened? So they came north of the border, and they were willing to work for next to nothing. It is a blot on American history that we have maintained a system of slave labor, and now we're blaming the immigrants for that. We need a president who understands we can heal this country. We can have sane immigration policies, but we have to stop blaming the victims. We have to start enforcing labor law. We have to start enforcing laws that relate to corporate conduct. We have to have a sane immigration policy, but we have to also make sure that we do not exclude people from an opportunity. Those who have been here, who have paid their taxes and paid their dues and been part of our economy for the last decade need to have a chance to have a path to citizenship. They should not be told after they've made their contribution to our economy, no, we don't want you anymore. Go home, because America is their new home. And their children should have basic rights. And we have to make sure the children have a right to education and health care as well. We need to have an approach where a president will take a healing hand on this country and restore this country's loss of civil liberties. In my first week in office, I will have our Justice Department go to federal court and seek to overturn the Patriot Act as being unconstitutional. We will work to cancel the Military Commissions Act. It's not worthy of America. We will stop government spying. We will get government out of people's bedrooms. We will make sure that people have a right to the private sphere again. We will make sure our brothers and sisters who are gay or lesbian, transgendered, bisexual have true marriage equality. Marriage equality. This country needs a healing hand, one that will look at the issue of abortion and understand that we can reconcile it by saying we can make abortions less necessary, but with a universal health care program we can finally have prenatal care, postnatal care, child care, universal health care, a living wage, help create the climate that will foster people to make choices that will be confirming of life. We need a president who understands the imperative of our Constitution. When Steve Cabo introduced me, he mentioned the debate in South Carolina. Now, why did I introduce this resolution of impeachment? It wasn't because I am after Mr. Cheney. Let me explain something. I believe that the most important thing that binds us as a people is the Constitution. That is the document, is a sacred text for us in a democratic society. And when someone takes that oath of office and they pledge to support the Constitution of the United States, that's a sacred oath for our society. And because I see our Constitution at risk, and because I think that the Vice Presidency and the Presidency have to have the highest standards for anyone in a democratic society, I laid down that challenge, and I ask all members of Congress to join me in making the Vice President finally accountable. And when we do that, then we will make our President accountable. This is about our Constitution. It is about our adherence to international law. And there is a connection between peace and international law. There's an imperative to uphold international law. As President of the United States, I'll move to have the United States join the International Criminal Court. It is absolutely necessary that all of us be held to the same standards that we would want everyone else in the world held to. We will work not only to confirm the tenets of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, but we will work to abolish all nuclear weapons. Life on the planet depends on it. Depends on a president who can work with the world community, who can reach out to the leaders everywhere and say, this endangers us all. Let's beat our swords into plowshares, our spears into pruning hooks. Let's move away from all the threats to our planet. I want to see America take a strong stand for international law by fully participating in the Biological Weapons Convention, the Chemical Weapons Convention, the Small Arms Treaty, the Landmine Treaty. We must join Kyoto and go beyond Kyoto, as I mentioned. My friends, under a Kucinich administration, the world, which has been separated from America in many ways by the policies of this administration, will, with a United States president who comes forward with a sense of compassion and integrity and authenticity, who understands the imperative of human unity, the world is ready to fall in love with America all over again. It's time for us to think in terms of reconnecting with the world community. I tell you, there's a new America out there and a new world out there. I can see it. It is just waiting to be called forward. It is waiting for us to see it together. It is waiting for us to see a nation at peace. A nation with full employment, a nation with health care for all, a nation with education for all, a nation with peace for all, a nation with civil liberties for all, a nation with compassion for all, a nation with love for all. This is a new America. Let's call it forward. This is a country we love. Let's make it happen. America, America, America. Thank you.